Hello. It looks like it's just starting. Are we starting? And it looks like we're live. Excellent. Hello and welcome back to Edible York. And we're having a go at seed planting live again. But we've also got some seeds we looked at in the last few weeks. And going back sort of 3 weeks or so, we've also got some fairly large plants that are growing quite well and pretty much time for them to go into their final pots. So we've got a few different things to do today. So the main seeds that I'm going to look at planting today are mustard and cress. So they're dead easy. You don't even need soil to do those. We can do those in eggshells, like the little sheet that we posted a couple of weeks ago, or we can pop them out onto little tubs like that. And all we need in the bottom is a sheet of kitchen roll. So the first thing we're going to try today is planting some of those seeds out. So we can get our kitchen roll and we can fold it up so that it goes into the bottom of one of those. So what I did with mine a few minutes ago was I just sort of folded it kind of in 3 like that so that it can sit in the bottom of that tub. The other thing you'll want to do, of course, is water it, because seeds want some water to activate them, make them feel like, oh, right, it's not dry anymore, it's time to start growing. So we can just water that in there, and we want it reasonably damp. So I've actually just got a little bit of running water in the bottom there to start us off. And then we want to choose either our mustard or our cress. Now, both of these say that they can be planted and harvested any time of the year. So if you've got a windowsill and you've got a little bit of sunlight there and you've got a pot and some water, you can grow these wherever. You actually get a similar sort of effect with pea seeds as well. They'll probably do a little bit better if you've got a small bit of compost in the top, and then you can put the peas on top and grow those for pea shoots. So similar sort of thing, we don't need any massive sort of growing things for these. So can do either mustard or cress. I'm going to go for mustard, and I'm just going to tear that open. And you get a lot of seeds in these. So this one says 1,200 seeds. So if you like mustard and cress, then this will probably keep you going for maybe a year. So we can put quite a lot of those into our mustard and cress pot. So I've got my pot, I've got some seeds there that I'm going to put in, and I'm just going to sprinkle them reasonably liberally around there. We've got somebody joining us, so hello Sarah. Oh yeah, mustard and cress, great for egg sandwiches, very good point. And how do you make sure you don't add too much water to drown the seeds? Yeah, so we don't want the seeds actually floating, and that's part of the reason to put the kitchen roll in the bottom there, is just to lift them up over the level of the water. So I've got a reasonable amount of water in here at the moment. It's just kind of like there's a little bit of water above the tea towel, but the kitchen towel. But it's going to soak into the seeds. So we don't want to water them again if you've actually got running water sat there. But we can water them tomorrow if it looks like they're starting to dry out there. So I've put quite a few of those seeds in there. And each of those produces a little seedling and a sprout, and then those leaves at the top. And the great thing about these is they keep growing, so you can have a couple of a couple of snips into your sandwich for a few days, and then they'll sort of start growing back again. So mustard and cress, great for things like that. So yes, Sarah, you're absolutely right. You don't want the seeds floating around there, but you do want them reasonably damp to actually start activating. Brilliant. Okay, so I can put that over on the windowsill and get those going. You might have also seen in one of our little sheets earlier on, you can also do the same sort of thing and screw up some kitchen roll or whatever and put it into an eggshell and draw a face on the eggshell and put the cress on. And then when it grows, a week later, you'll start to have Mr. Cress head with the green hair sticking out the top there. So that's quite fun as well. So toilet roll, kitchen roll, put it into an eggshell, nice and wet, and then sprinkle the seeds on top. That works really well too. Okay, so those are reasonably fun things to start planting. It's also getting to sort of mid to late April now, so we can start to plant anything that says plant in April. We can also, because it's nice and warm out there, start to plant things that say that you can sow them outdoors. So I started off some radishes and some lettuce outdoors. It was rocket, wasn't it? Radishes and rocket outdoors a couple of weeks ago. Those seedlings are starting to look really good now as well. What were we doing last week? Well, last week we were starting to plant some herb seeds. So looking at what's happened so far, we can see that the basil is doing really well. We've got some nice little seedlings coming up there. Parsley, I always find parsley takes a little bit of time to come up, so there's no sign of anything happening on the parsley front at the moment. That can take sort of 14 to 21 days sometimes to come up, but basil already within a week, that's up and running. I also planted some flower seeds. So we've got some edible flowers here, nasturtiums. So I'm not sure whether you can see just down the bottom there, but we've got a couple of little nasturtium seedlings coming up there, just poking their heads up. I put about 16 in here, and I've got 4 showing up already a week later. So the nasturtiums are doing quite well as well. And the final one to mention is I planted some climbing beans and some runner beans last week, and most of those haven't poked their heads above the soil yet, but one of them in the middle there, one of my climbing beans, has come out of its little seed shell and it's starting to put its first leaves up. So it's just starting to come along there after 7 days. So that one's reasonably up and running, but I wouldn't expect to see many of those before a couple of weeks. So bean seeds, pea seeds, things like that, they might take sort of 10 days or so before they start showing. So herbs doing reasonably well, parsley a little bit slow, and nasturtium seeds. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I planted my other 2 lots of flowering seeds. So in here we've got pot marigold or calendula, and these ones popped up sort of within a week. It's now 2 weeks on, and those are doing very, very well. There was no sign of the pansy seeds last week, but in the second week there, they've started coming as well. So edible pansy stroke violas and calendula or marigold, those are both doing quite well as well. And again, those are edible flowers. So sunflower is another example of edible flowers. You can even eat the petals. There's quite a few. If you Google edible flowers, there's quite a few that you can have a go at, so that you've got both pretty things in pots outside your door as well as edible things in pots outside your door. Okay, so those are doing pretty well. We've also got some of our sort of tomato seedlings that I potted on. They're looking reasonably good now. These were the yellow ildy ones that I started growing sort of 3 to 4 weeks ago. So those are doing pretty well. And oh my goodness, the very first things that we started sowing in one of my first videos were some of the larger seeds. We planted out some cucumber and some courgette seeds. Now, this courgette has done amazingly well, and it's starting to try and put its roots out the bottom. So that one's going to need to go in a bigger pot in the next day or so. But sometimes things don't always grow as fast. So there's my pot from one of the first weeks, and the first of the courgette seeds is that big, and the second one's only just come up. So isn't that, yeah, we're looking at Mr. Slow Coach there, but he has come up, so we're going to get a second courgette out of that one. And this one's actually the other cucumber, so we've got a cucumber there that is also slightly slower than the cucumber that was the first to come up, which is already that big. So seeds, very often they do come all at once, but sometimes some of them are a little bit faster or a little bit slower. So the difference between the courgette plant and the cucumber is one of them wants to grow tall. It's a vine plant. So what we'll see happening on the cucumber here is we're starting to get these little tendrils. So we've got a little hook starting to form there, and it wants to curl itself around a stick or a trellis on a wall or a bit of string so that it can climb up, and then the cucumber's hanging from this vine plant. So this particular one is currently in a pot that big, but it needs to be in a pot that big. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop that little baby on today, and what you might see if we look a little bit closer on here is we're actually starting to get some of the little flower buds coming here. So it's really wanting to start producing some cucumbers for us, as well as wanting to start to grow with these little tendrils. So that baby definitely needs potting on. So that's what we're going to do with this next little bit, is we're going to take our larger pot and our smaller pot. And what I've done in the larger pot is start putting some compost into the bottom there. And again, you want the compost to be reasonably damp so that if we do disturb the roots of that one, it's actually got some nice environment to go into. And one of the tricks that sometimes you see on the TV programs is if you put the smaller pot inside the larger pot, you can actually fill the compost around the side, and then you can pop the pot straight in there. So I'm going to give this a try today. So I'm going to put the compost around that pot, and then we're going to lift the cucumber out of that pot, and it'll all slot in perfectly, and we don't have to disturb the roots as much. Now, cucumbers are reasonably forgiving, but we'd still put ourselves back by a couple of days' growth if the roots are really disturbed, because it's got to then concentrate on getting the roots back in shape before it starts growing me any cucumbers. So I'm just going to sort of pad that compost down around my small pot there, yeah, and then I'm going to lift that out so I've got the shape of the cucumber pot in there. really gently. And then I'm going to just ease it out of the pot. So I'm going to squeeze around. I have watered this earlier on this morning, so the compost should all hold together. But we might find that there's quite a lot of roots in here that have started growing. So we should see inside. Yeah, so that one's starting to become a little bit pot bound. The roots are starting to go around at the bottom, but it's definitely ready to move on to its bigger pot. And I'm just going to ease that into the hole that we made for that inside my bigger pot. I can even put a little bit of extra soil around the top to try and keep his stem upright. Make sure I've still got the label so I know which courgette it is, sorry, which cucumber it is, and press that down a little bit. Okay, so these ones are vine growing, so they're going to want to clamber upwards. So what I'm going to do is go and put that in the side there, and then I've just got a little green gardening cable tie, but they're just like the bag ties that you'll find in the kitchen, and I'm just going to attach that one until it starts getting its little tendrils round the stick itself. I'm just going to attach that on there and give that a little twist. Yeah. So these tendrils are going to start sort of curling themselves round there and keep it growing upwards. But that's quite happy now there in a much bigger pot, so those roots are going to find some more compost, give it even more oomph for growing me lots of lovely cucumbers later on. So that one now is probably pretty happy to go outside as long as we don't have any more frosts in York. So what I'm tending to do with any plants that I want to put outside is on a nice day, they can go and sit out in the daylight and in the sunshine, but I just keep an eye on the weather forecast in case it's going to go down to 2 or 1 or 0 or -1, and if they do, I'm going to put them on a tray like this and just bring them into the hall overnight, and then I can put them back out again. Once we start getting into May, it'll be more than happy outside. And things like the cucumber market more are an outdoor cucumber variety, so I don't have to keep this one on the windowsill. It will be happy outside as long as there's no big frost. So that's our little cucumber happy. What I've been also doing is the same sort of thing for my little tomatoes. So these ones have been mostly on a windowsill so far, but over the next few days, my little LD tomato plants there are going to go and sit outside during the day to harden them off, and then I can put them into grow bags. You'll see at the moment they're reasonably sort of flimsy. It doesn't look like they've had much of an outdoor life. So being outside in the sunshine will give them a good old boost from all of the light, but also being out in the wind will strengthen those stems a little bit. So that's called hardening off, but I can bring them in the evening if it looks like it's going to be chilly. They've only lived inside a house, these ones, so I'll probably put them outside and then bring them inside overnight for a couple of nights just to start hardening those off. And I've got another couple of questions. Candida says, how long do tomatoes take to show after you plant the dry seeds? So that's a really good question. And very often, if they have optimum conditions, they'll probably come up in about sort of 10 days. But depending on whether the soil's just a little bit too damp or a little bit too dry, then it might take sort of 2 weeks or so before those tomato seeds start growing. Now I've actually got some very little ones over here that just planted? It's a good question, thank you for asking. So these ones, the first two here came up within about 7 days, and I thought, oh, these money makers, they're rubbish seeds. They haven't produced any tomato plants at all. But lo and behold, 7 days later, they start showing as well. So this is now a couple of weeks on since I planted these as a later set. Which ones are the first ones? Sun Gold. So those were slightly old seeds, the Sun Gold from last year. They're done fine. These Moneymaker seeds, they were actually this year's seed, but they took another sort of 4 or 5, 6 days to start showing. This one's only come up in the last sort of 3 days. So sometimes tomato plants do take a little bit longer. And we've got one other question down the bottom there. Are all viola flowers edible? Yeah, so it's always best to go and read up about these. But yes, the little baby violas, all of those ones are edible. The larger pansies, they possibly don't taste quite as sweet, but they're all edible seeds. So all of the pansies are edible seeds. And nasturtiums are great because their flowers are edible as well as their leaves being edible. So they're great. And the calendulas, those have lots of lovely bright yellow petals, and you can sprinkle those petals on a salad. And I do that with the nasturtiums as well. I use the little flowers to decorate salad. That's really, really nice. So yeah, do go and Google edible seeds. There are some really good articles from some of the growing magazines, and they'll give you some nice ideas about the sorts of things that we can plant. So which ones? Those were my nasturtium seeds. So I quite like the trailing nasturtium. Some of them grow taller, but they say plant sort of March, April, May. And then you can plant them out, and then they start flowering sort of June, July, August. And actually I've had those flower through to October without a problem. So that's it for my little seed planting live session today. We do also have another little activity I'm going to post this afternoon, particularly if you've got kids around or you want a little crafting session. One of our Edible York members has done a little how to make a sort of miniature garden, either in a little bowl or a hanging basket frame or a tray. You can use gravel and you can use some of your cress and mustard seeds there to have a little growing patch in that garden. So there's a really lovely little activity coming up later today that Caroline's going to do. So hopefully that's given you a few things to have a think about planting out this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye-bye.